Thank you for the wonderful introduction. My name is Noah Grillo, and I'm going to be talking about why we chose Brazil, why we chose Brazil's agricultural sector, and I'm going to go into the ecological framework of PESTLE. So, why did we choose Brazil? We chose Brazil because Brazil is the largest country in Latin America, as well as having Latin America's highest GDP at $3.4 trillion. Brazil also so happens to have the ninth largest global economy, and it is part of the G7 countries, which is part of the seven emerging economies, which will in 2050 take over the E7 countries that we learned in chapter 2. We also found that Brazil has very interesting growth trends with the steady rise and the dramatic fall due to the recession in 2016 for Brazil. And for agriculture, you would expect that we chose agriculture because Brazil would be an agricultural state. However, Brazil's agriculture only accounts for a total of 5% GDP, meaning that Brazil is in fact not a agricultural state. But this statistic is a lot more important than it leads on. Because Brazil went from a net importing state to a exporting state, agriculture has been a huge component of its economic growth and rebound from the recession. The agriculture has also let it become a world-leading exporter for a lot of commodities such as livestock, soybeans, coffee, and sugar. There's also a very interesting relationship between the growing demand of Brazil's agriculture and the world conservation efforts to conserve the Amazon. And now that I touched on that relationship between Brazil's geographical proximity to the Amazon and the growing market demand of agriculture, I wanted to talk about the ecological framework, or how the environment affects business. And the variables I selected to talk about Brazil's agriculture in the ecological framework is the agricultural land usage, deforestation, and climate change. So the graph shows us seeing a steady increase of agricultural land percentage in Brazil. From 2010, we see a 32%, and in 2018, we see a almost 34% land usage solely for agricultural demand. And 2% does not seem like all that much, but when you consider the amount of land that that surrounds Brazil, which is 3.3 million square acres, 2% of that is a lot of land. Of that 34%, 9.6 of it is arable land, or land used for crops, meaning that more than 60% of all agricultural land is dedicated solely to cattle raising. The graph also shows a slight decline from 2015 to 2016, probably due to the recession or environmental initiatives, but I do not see that maintaining, because in 2018 there was a new president came in, Bolsonaro, and he has an anti-environmental platform. And along with the anti-environment platform and just the steady market demand increase, I don't see land usage declining and maintaining that decline for much longer. And now that I talked about the percentage of Brazil being used for agriculture, I want to talk about how you see that increase, which is deforestation. As mentioned before, cattle raising accounts for a lot of that land use, and it also accounts for 80% of total deforestation. We were seeing a general decline in the last decade due to environmental initiatives such as REDD. However, you see a huge 30% spike in 2018, and that talks about the Bolsonaro's introduction of the presidency and his pullback on environmental regulation. He believes that increasing the environmental protection hurts Brazil's economic advantage. However, there's no evidence to prove that, and Brazil is actually a very good evidence as to the opposite, in that the more that they protect the environment, the better the economy does. And this is shown from 2004 to 2014 with a 3.5 annual economic growth, and a 56% increase in agricultural yields, even though there was an 80% decrease in deforestation rates. And I had such a large emphasis on deforestation because of how deforestation affects climate change, and how climate change has been hurting the agricultural yields of crops. In the graph I used corn yields, and well, not corn yields, but the price of corn. So climate change affects the yield by causing significant decreases. And this is due to a number of reasons, such as changing climate and heavy drought and heavy rainy seasons, which affects the opportunity for farmers to take the yields. It also hurts the growth rates because a lot of these crops are very sensitive to the changes in temperature. It also brings in a lot of crop-eating insects like weevils. And there's a prediction that 13% of food production decline is going to be due to agricultural change in the next 20 years. We see a huge spike in corn prices in 2016. This is due to inflation. But that was only a highlight of the steady increase in corn raises because because farmers have not been able to yield enough, and so they need to inflate the prices to accommodate that. And this inflation is really going to hurt emerging economies such as Brazil. And so that is the end of the ecological framework of PESTLE. I'm now going to hand it back over to the rest of my group to talk about the sociocultural framework. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.